All right, so this is the first module of week two. So we're going to be looking at Socrates and the Sophists. So there's a lot to be said about Socrates. He's really a complex figure in the history of philosophy, and so it's really important for us to look at some primary texts on Socrates. So we're going to be reading, in addition to Sophie's World, we're also going to be reading the Apology. So once you work through all the modules on Sophie's World, which should give you sort of acquaint you with some Socratic themes, then we'll work through some primary texts from Plato, who is writing about Socrates, right? So Plato is the author, but Socrates is the character, and presumably we can learn things about Socrates from those texts. So um, so we'll be doing that later on in the module. For right now, I'd like to just talk about the Sophists. So, who are the Sophists? The Sophists are these intellectual elites in Athens. They made money as teachers, right? And so what they would do is they would come to other political elites in Athens, and they would teach their children, right? And they would teach their children to be good at rhetoric and good at persuasion, right? So, what matters to a sophist is making money, gaining power, and influencing people, right? So, constructing philosophical arguments that are directed at understanding truth about the universe, that is not their project. They say, no, 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 that's like a waste of time. We should be spending more time like gaining power and like influencing people, right? And so periodically, there are many sophists, and so they adopt a view called skepticism, which is something like, just a flat-footed version of this view is that one cannot know about the philosophical truths about the universe or about nature, right? So those pre-Socratic philosophers that were trying to understand how nature works, that's a waste of time. You can't know about that stuff. Rather, um, we should be thinking about how we can influence other people, right? And the other thing about them is that um, they are ethical relativists. So, an ethical relativist is somebody that thinks that morals or notions of right and wrong are all relative to a given culture, right? And so, in some cultures, it's like okay to commit infanticide, right? If that were the case. And in other cultures, say it would be wrong to commit infanticide. That's when you kill lots of infants. That means that in one context, it's morally okay, and in the other context, it's morally wrong, right? But there's no ultimate truth about it. It's all relative to the society in which one is present, right? So there are no overarching ethical truths. They're just smaller relative truths to given cultures. Okay, so um, there's also like a tagline: "Man is the measure of all things," and this is basically saying that, look, we need not try to understand different things or ultimate truth about reality. Rather, we as people create what is true. Right? Truth is contingent upon what we think, and truth is contingent upon our own ends and desires and interests, right? So we are the ones that dictate what is true, rather than something independent of us working, sort of posing upon us. So, are there any gods, or is there a single God? Like, who cares? Like, what matters is that I get what I need and I can influence other people, right? So this might be like um, a little bit of an uncharitable reading of the Sophists, but this is kind of what we get in the Gardner text. So you might be thinking, why are we talking about the Sophists? For two reasons. One is that Socrates will often argue against the Sophists. So Socrates will say that there is such a thing as absolute right or wrong, and we can know the truth about morality only if we get rid of our own ignorance, right? And we actually begin to see things that are valuable, and we begin to do philosophy, right? We can live a good life, and like an objectively good life. And the Sophists deny all that. So that means that Socrates and the Sophists are going to go back and forth with one another. So that's one thing. And the other reason is that in the Apology, um, uh, Socrates is going to be tried in Athens against his peers, right? And he's going to be accused of being a sophist. So you'll need to know what a sophist is before reading the Apology. So anyway, so this is sophistry, or this is a summary of the Sophists. We saw that they're ethical relativists and they're skeptics, and that what matters more than getting philosophical truths is influencing people and creating good rhetoric. So